Hey everybody, we're talking about a subject that I get asked a lot about, and that is basically how to edit photos that were taken under low light, high ISO situations. This could apply for sports, which I'm going to illustrate today, but also could be for events, weddings, and the like. So let's get going. All right, so I will tell you that the technique I'm about to show you right now does not really apply if you're in a media where you have to pump out photos very quickly for posting on the internet, as the game's going on. It's not. It's kind of a slower process. It's not designed for speed, it's designed for quality. And what I mean by quality is very low noise, very low grain structure, lots of bright colors. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't have to give those photos right away to the client, you have a day or two before you have to give it to them, perfect. You're in the right place. So let's get going. So the first software I'm going to use is Photo Mechanic to cull the photos. I'm going to start off with a set of photos. There's almost 2,000 photos from this game I photographed. That's a lot of photos, and I'm not going to post those many to the gallery. Those are all going to get culled down to around 100 or so in the final product after editing. Photo Mechanic is excellent at culling photos. And why is because it renders photos extremely fast, much faster than any other editing software out there. I don't care what you say, Photo Mechanic is the standard. Most news, print, media photographers use Photo Mechanic religiously. So let's get going on it. So I've loaded up Photo Mechanic with the images from this particular game. It's a high school JV soccer game. And I want to show you a couple things before we get started here. And first go over here to, Edit, Preferences. And we're going to go into Contact Sheet. Now you see this default sorting method right here. I like to use capture time because I'm using multiple cameras and I like all the photos in the order that I actually did it in. There's some other examples here. You can use modification time, file name, stuff like that. I just prefer capture time. Let's go over here to preview. And you say automatically advance to next photo when tag is changed. So this is the technique I'm going to use as I go through these. I'm either going to use the arrow key to the right to advance or the T for tag. When I hit T for tag, it automatically moves to the next photo. When I put the arrow, it automatically moves to the photo. We're going to move through these photos, even though there's almost 2,000 of them. We're going to move through it very quickly using this technique. I'm going to go to the top left, and there's this little magnifying glass. I'm going to call it up. So I expanded it to see it full frame. Obviously, you can see this first photo is not good. It focused on the net behind him. This is a goalie, and this is warm-up. So I'm just going to buzz right through these, and I'll tag the ones I like, and I'll skip over the ones I don't want to advance. So, and I'm going to just do this very quickly. Here we go. Don't like, maybe. No, I don't like his expression. I'm still advancing. What we got? Okay, so I think we're cooking with gas here. You got the ball, you got the goalie, he's very attentive, he's focused. So I'm going to tag that, but not this one because his face is obscured. Oh, here we go. We got one. Face is obscured, that's not going to go. And we just keep moving. So I think you get the point here. So let's say we've gone through this whole group of about 2,000 images. So now we're going to go over here and we're going to go to Edit, select Tagged, and you see it lights up. All the ones that are yellow were the ones that I tagged. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move them. So we've moved them, copy, go down on File, copy and move photos, brings up a dialog. You see this item says Move Photos, Delete Originals. That's what I plan to do. Go down to Copy to this folder. Photo Mechanic culls. I've already set it up ahead of time. Select folder and move. And what it's going to do is move all those photos and leave the rest. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go find those and we're going to run them through Topaz Denoise. All right, so now I'm going to call up Topaz Denoise AI. Topaz has a lot of different products. This one I use almost all the time. including for daylight photos. Because even in daylight photos, you're going to get some noise, but this cleans it up very nice and it sharpens them pretty well, much more efficiently or effectively than I think than in Lightroom. All right, so here's my examples from the call. I'm just going to grab all of those, bring them in, select all, and I have found that with my particular cameras that there's different modes here in Topaz Denoise, or models they call it. Of them, with raw photos, I prefer low light, and I just set it on auto, let it go to town, and let it just bulk process all of them at once. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I've got it set up, select all. There's 981 of them that I had culled previously out of this group. I'm going to save 981. Now, in this case, I'm going to save it as a DNG. You can also save it as a TIFF or a JPEG. You want to preserve as much data as possible for when you go to edit it. So that would either be a TIFF or a DNG. I just prefer DNG, so that's what I go with. Okay, but these are all your different options right there. Save images, and it's going to go to town. So it's going to go to the folder that I designated it in. It's going to process them. What I have found with my computer is Topaz Denoise takes about 20-25 seconds per image. So if you do a little math, with 981 images at 20 to 25 seconds apiece, let's assume worst case scenario, you're talking several hours here, right? So this is what I do in those circumstances. I know this is going to take a while. This process is going to take a while with Denoise. All right. So what I do is most games are late afternoon in the evening, right? Come home, download my photos, I cull them, and I throw them in Denoise, knowing that it's going to take several hours. Then I go to bed. And the following morning, I get up, they're done, and I start to edit. All right, so let's assume it's the next day. I'm going to take those images, which I've already processed, and we're going to open up Lightroom, and we're going to do some editing. And I'm going to show you how I like to edit these photos that have just come out of Topaz Denoise. Okay, we're going to go into the library, and we're going to do import. I'm going to go find those. Now, I tell you, on import, I like to use a preset that I've already built that I use for myself. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put a link down below for all my presets, or they're sports related, and you can have them. Now, just keep in mind, this is designed for raw images. So if you try to do this with a JPEG, it may not look as good. Apply during import, develop settings. This particular preset that I built for myself is called Sports Night as opposed to Sports Day. And I'm going to go down here. You can see them all. These are all the ones that went through Denoise. Hit import, and away we go. I will tell you, I culled quite a bit. So you're not going to see all 981. In fact, you're just going to see some that I actually edited at some point in time for this particular game. I'm going to take you to a couple of images. I'm just going to use these as examples as my editing technique. Okay, this one. This is that goalie photo I talked about a little bit earlier. The first thing I do when I have a bunch of images, when they get into Lightroom after Denoise, is I like to check for sharpness. And the way to do that is you zoom in, click on the face, go down to 100%. You see this is pretty sharp on his face. This is the way I like it. You know, as a secondary, how does the uniform look, which is pretty good. But the face, to me, is the most important thing. The next thing I do is, assuming I like it, is straighten out the horizon, crop for impact, which you can see I'm doing right now. Doesn't need all that extraneous stuff. And so that's what I'm going for right here. So far more impactful than all our other stuff around him. Now, if we go over here to the presets that were already built, I'll run those through you right now. So white balance is as shot. I tend to use auto white balance. Generally works fine. Not always, but generally it works pretty good. I like to add a little contrast. Again, this is for raw photos. Down here in presence, I like to add some texture, clarity, and dehaze. It pumps up the colors and makes the image just pop in my mind. I like to add some vibrance, saturation. Now, after doing all that, let's go down to the HSL panel. Saturation, I actually reduce the red, oranges, and yellows. And why do I do that? Because I'm pumping up all sorts of colors, which I like. I'm a color guy. But the problem is when you do that, including with the dehaze, is skin tones, especially darker skin tone people, tend to go more red and orange. It doesn't look good. So I desaturate red, oranges, and yellows. Going down, sharpening, turned it off because the denoise did all the work for me. Noise reduction. I also turn off the luminance noise. I have found I don't have any issues with luminance noise after denoise has done its thing. I do leave in a little color noise reduction because I have found even with Topaz Denoise, sometimes in the really dark areas in the backgrounds, there'll still be like this purple haze, and I throw in a little color noise reduction and removes it. Going down, lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, sure. Enable profile corrections for the lenses that I was using. But here's an interesting one. I go down to calibration, and you see I go down to the blue primary and actually pump up the saturation in the blue. And why do I do that? Because I have found that it enhances the colors, gives them better color tone and saturation without affecting skin tones, which is pretty cool. All right, so having said that, we know how we do this. This is my basic setup. And so really, once I got this preset going, the only thing I have to adjust for the most part is exposure a little bit left and right. If somebody's wearing white uniforms, that tends to get blown out. So I may have to adjust the whites and the highlights down. But other than that, this is pretty much a pretty good set. And I'm just really changing exposure at this point in time. Okay, I haven't said that. I want to talk about a couple other images here and a couple other techniques that I like to use for sports photography. All right, so we have an image here, and the subject is partially in the shadows. So can we bring up, the dark areas on this person? And the way I would do that is I would go over here and I would do a mask. And in Lightroom, they've added a feature where you can actually go into a particular subject, which is great. And I'm going to click on new mask, and it's going to try to find the subject. Now, it did a good job. So it only picked this individual right here. You can see in the red shading. Sometimes it'll pick the people in the background, like this guy in the back. Fortunately, it did not do that this time. But if it does do that, you click up here to subtract, and you would use, like, say, the brush and brush that person out. Fortunately, it didn't do it in this case. I'm actually a little bit surprised it didn't do it. So what can we do with this individual? Well, we can actually bring up some shadows a little bit, or maybe bring up him a little bit without killing the highlights, and just bring him up a little bit without affecting the background in any way, shape, or form. In the old days, I would bring up the shadows and it would bring up the background, and that's not necessarily wanted. A night photo, I like the background being nice and dark. So you don't want to go too crazy with it, but yeah, I think that's much better. You can see him a lot better than you did before. So there's off, and then we'll turn it back on. You see there's a significant difference in the subject and being able to see, all the details in the shadowed areas on it. One other technique I want to show you is this one right here. And this uses a product called Topaz Photo AI. So let's zoom in on this subject right here, this guy right here. Now, if you look carefully, it may be hard to see on YouTube, but if you look at it carefully, the face is slightly out of focus. It's not horrible, but it's a little out. So I'm going to use a product called Topaz Photo AI. It's one of those pieces of software that it can do some amazing things, but if you're not careful with it, it can kind of go overboard. Before we take it into Photo AI, I like to edit it, or I'll just do some quick edits real quick. And it's a little too dark. And the highlights are kind of a bit much on that white uniform on this guy right here to the left. Okay, just quick edits. So let's take it again. Let's take it into Photo AI and see what it can do for the face on this individual right here. So you right click on the image, and then you say edit in and go down to Topaz Photo AI. You have the option of editing a copy with the Lightroom adjustments, which is what I want. And away it goes. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a TIFF file. It's going to open up Photo AI, and it's going to actually edit the TIFF file, not the original, in Photo AI. All right, I'm going to go up to his face because that's the thing I am most concerned about. So if you see up here, upper right, it's doing a lot of AI calculations, right? So we got subject detected, which it found it. It's doing what it's calling recovering one of one faces. And you can see as I hover over faces, it actually identified the face on the subject. Okay, cool. Sharpening the soft subject, and it's identified the subject itself. Didn't remove noise. It didn't enhance resolution, but it can do that. So let's compare. This is the before on the left and the after on the right. So it certainly cleaned it up quite a bit. It sharpened it up quite a bit. I would say maybe a smidgen too much, and that's what I see with Photo AI. Sometimes it goes a little too far. It makes it a little, maybe a little too smooth, a little plasticky looking. So what happens is you can actually go into each of these and actually reduce what it's doing. And that's what I think I'm going to do, including with the recover faces. I think I'm going to tone it down a little bit. I want it better than the other one, but I don't want it like going crazy and making him look too plastic. And I think I have achieved that goal here. And if you compare the two, I think the new one is better. So I'm going to save it to Adobe Lightroom. It's going to do its thing. It's going to create that GIF, or excuse me, it's going to create that TIFF file and send it back over to Lightroom. And if you look down here in the bottom right, you'll see two images. The one on the left is the edit, the TIFF file. The one on the right is the original DNG file. This is what I want to do. We're going to just going to save a couple of photos here. I'm just going to identify probably the ones I already edited. And we're going to go ahead and I want to describe how I like to export. Here is, this is what I did. Examples, finals. I'm going to go with file name. We're doing JPEGs, sRGB color space. I did the file size at 10K. Long edge, it kind of depends on what you want. You don't have to have that. One of my clients demands 3000 pixels. Resolution always 300. Sharpen for screen, standard. And we're not going to use a watermark in this case, and hit export. One thing about having a high resolution camera like the Z9 is, although it may not look perfect in Lightroom, sometimes when you bring it down to JPEG size and it's actually crunched down to a smaller size, sometimes looks better as a JPEG than it did in Lightroom, which I have found. So nice and clean image here. He looks nice and sharp. So I like it. Good stuff. Next image, same thing. Looks pretty good. All right, I like it a lot. And then final image, we talked about this fellow right here. Looking pretty good. Again, these are at 100%. All right, everybody, so there you go. Photo Mechanic, Topaz Denoise, Lightroom, and if it needs it, Topaz Photo AI. You now know how I edit my high ISO images for what I feel is the best possible quality given current technology and software available. All right, I'll see you next time.